generation really depressed, or did they just grow up without dad?
How big of a deal is the problem of fatherlessness? Wow, check out the stats that Chris describes here in this video.
Boys who grow up apart from their biological father are 2 times more likely to end up in jail or prison by age 30. Fatherlessness is a better predictor of growing up in incarceration than being poor or their race. Young men are more likely to end up in jail or prison than they are to complete college if they grow up in any non-intact home. Boys in fatherless homes are twice as likely to grow up with depression. Girls in fatherless homes are 10 times as likely to grow up with depression. So a big question there is this generation really depressed, or did they just grow up without dad? But the big point is, there's been a massive increase in fatherlessness over the last 50 years, and fatherlessness impacts boys more than it does girls. Impacts girls in some ways worse than boys, but overall, girls are referred to as dandelions and boys are referred to as daisies. We would think that boys are psychologically more robust.
Totally true.
But without dad, boys are daisies and girls are dandelions.
Is this generation depressed, or are we just struggling with the natural results of fatherlessness? In a culture that is obsessed with individualism, we have made a decision to intentionally downplay this particular dynamic, this factor, and it's massive. So why aren't we dealing with the problem at its root? Why do we have such a hard time talking about the problem of fatherlessness? I think that one reason we don't like talking about this topic is that the people that are voting or buying or watching videos have already experienced this. They are past their childhood. They've experienced fatherlessness. And so to go back and think about this topic is difficult for them. And it requires us to care about future generations to talk about this. We have to care less about our lifetime and more about the children of the future. And because we are obsessed with individualism, because we could care less about legacy, we are not prioritizing future children. And if we did, we would be talking about little else than how do we handle this epidemic of fatherlessness. So how do you create a culture where dads invest in their kids? Well, you have to champion fathers. You have to make them heroes. You have to make a big deal about what it means to be a dad. You have to make being a dad cool. And we spent decades disrespecting dads, making them the butt of every joke. And then we're surprised that nobody wants to be a dad, or even when you are a dad, you don't care that much about that identity. That is so dangerous for children. Kids are the victims of this decision to downplay the importance of fatherhood. The Bible talks about this in a really interesting way. In Malachi chapter 4, the last passage in the entire Old Testament, we read all about how God says, I'm going to send the spirit of Elijah so that it turns the hearts of fathers to their children and children to their fathers. If this does not happen, the land is doomed. It will be cursed with destruction. And we are seeing the results of that. If we do not find a way to turn the hearts of fathers to their children and children to their fathers, the land cannot survive this. You have to sort of hit the reset button on the land. In other words, the culture itself has to have a massive turnover and revolution, because how do you handle a culture that has so destroyed the heart connection between fathers and children? That is at the base of every thriving, healthy culture, and we are doing everything we can to undermine it. We have to pay attention to how do we help fathers love their children and love their identity as fathers. And this will cause children to turn their hearts toward their dads.